Yes, I'm Batman.
I'm Batman. I'm Batman, Alfred.
I'm Batman.
I am Batman!
I'm Batman. I'm Batman.
Greetings, Bat Family, and welcome to Holy BatCast, brought to you by Real Fans for Real Movies. Make sure you visit our website at holybatcast.com. It's your one-stop shop for all things Holy BatCast. You can find us all over social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Just search for Holy BatCast and you will find us. If you're a big fan of the show and are interested in supporting it, you can visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/holybatcast. As always, the biggest of thank you to all of our patrons. We couldn't do it without you. We're a proud member of the Real Fans Podcast Network, so if you're looking for some new podcasts to sample, you can find all of those at rf4rm.com. I'm Brent, and you can follow me on Twitter at BrentAcPrime. On this episode, we'll be discussing the epic 3-part DCCW crossover Elseworlds. Joining me is Ray.
Hello, I'm Ray. You can find me at the Flightcast.
And Andy and Jamie.
Hey, this feels real weird.
Yeah.
Feeling real weird about tonight, guys.
It's very strange. This glowing book, and then this. I don't know what's going on here, man.
Something is not quite right. I've tried to tell my friends about it. They don't believe me. They locked me in a closet.
At least it has a toilet.
Thank God for that. Hey, yeah. There's someone's messing with our reality, and things are all mixed up. But somehow we're all still in this together. So it's good to have you guys along for the ride, Ray and Brent. So welcome to Holy BatCast, or I guess you should welcome me to Holy BatCast.
Welcome you to your own show.
Yeah, please. It's like, being welcomed in my own home. It's kind of nice. See how the other half live.
I'm so dizzy.
I know. So confused. Anyway, yes, guys, hello and welcome back. And we are super excited to have Ray and Brent joining us to talk about the big annual crossover that happens every year now with all the CW Arrowverse shows. And so this year they jumped into Elseworlds. It was a 3-night event, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I watched them all at once today, so I think it was Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
It was.
Okay, good, great. And so yeah, we got the team together, and what we're gonna do is kind of like we've done with Suicide Squadcast in the past, and we are going to split up this episode between our two shows. So you're gonna get the first half here on Holy BatCast, and then when the time comes, you're gonna jump over to Ray and Brent's show. And where can they find your show, Ray and Brent, just in case they don't know it?
The easiest place would be go to suicidesquadcast.com, and you can find all the Squadcast shows there. You're going to look for DCTV Squadcast episode 82.
There you go. So start at Holy BatCast, end at DCTV Squadcast, and a good time will be had by all, I hope. If not, there's always next week, or next year for that matter. So yeah, why don't we get this party started? I'm trying to think of how to break it down. The first night was The Flash. The second night was...
Wait, you're getting the cart in front of the horse here.
Okay.
And I know we're trying to do things in a timely fashion, but this is both of their first times on the show. And I do believe there is a tradition.
Oh my God. See, the reality's being screwed with. I don't even remember how to do this anymore. But I'm really good at ripping my thumb out of its socket. So that's something. So yeah, let's start with you, Ray. If your first time on Holy BatCast, you got to tell us what's your favorite Batman movie and why?
Well, as I stroke my mutton chops that just grew in randomly as a result of this reality switching, I would have to say my favorite Batman movie, believe it or not, is Batman Begins. And the reason is because it's what I really was waiting for in terms of live-action Batman, like, my whole life. I wanted to see his origin done as well and as properly as that was. I still, to this day, even though I thoroughly enjoy most of the Batman movies, consider it to be the best Batman movie because I think it does the best job at telling his origin and really going into great detail in terms of explaining why he does what he does, which that was the first Batman movie I feel that did that in very detailed fashion, explaining why he does what he does and what his motivation is for it. And I just thoroughly enjoy that movie.
Excellent. Can't argue with that. What about you, Brent?
You know, I wish I had a different answer because this just feels too easy. But I got to go with The Dark Knight. Joker is my favorite Batman villain, and I love the performance that Heath Ledger put in there. You know, I know that's not exactly an uncommon opinion. Pretty much everybody was very happy with that movie, and I knew you were going to ask this question. I was thinking about it, and I'm like, if I could only watch one, if I have to pick one, it's got to be The Dark Knight.
I got to tell you, I recessed with the council, and we find their answers acceptable, so they can stay.
Okay. Phew.
Perfect.
I mean, there aren't a lot of wrong answers. There's only one wrong answer to that question, and that's why you haven't heard Brendan in a while. So
I'm curious as to which wrong answer that would be.
Forever.
Forever.
Oh, really? That's the wrong answer? Oh,
Yeah, he actually he likes Batman and Robin, but not because he thinks it's a good movie, but because he gets entertainment value.
it is far. I find it more watchable than Batman Forever.
I, however, do not. So
I-
we have an impasse there.
I would agree with you, Jamie. I think Forever is vastly more watchable than Batman and Robin, but that's a separate discussion.
I don't think either one of them's a great movie, but I can watch Forever. I've seen Batman and Robin 3 times, and there will not be a fourth. There shouldn't have been a third, but somebody made me watch it for a commentary.
Fair enough.
Sacrifices.
Fair enough.
Anyway, let's move on. Am I forgetting anything else, Jamie? Because
that's covered. I wanted to make sure we didn't, skip over tradition.
Of course. Cool. All right. Well, let's get into the crossover. So yes, it is December again, which means it's time for the annual Arrowverse crossover. So without further ado, let's jump into Elseworlds. I guess let's start our spoiler-free reactions, just overall, how we're feeling about it, and then we can start breaking into things that we liked or didn't like, so on and so forth. Yeah, we'll do that and see how that goes. So Ray, we've all watched the 3 episode of Elseworlds, and spoiler-free, how you feeling about this year's crossover?
Strong effort. Seriously, like really solid effort. I mean, I feel like they, as crossovers go, they've done a really solid job of getting better at them. They're miles ahead of where they were the first time they started trying to do these crossovers. And I guess I can get into my thoughts later in terms of how I think it ranks with the other ones. But this was another very strong effort for them all the way through. I felt from start to finish.
Cool, Brent. What about you?
I loved it. I'm still coming to terms with where I would put it if I was going to rank them, but luckily I'm allowed to like them all because I don't know where I would put it yet, but I really did love this. It was different. It was a great character study of the series leads. I really liked how the focus on it was very much the individual characters this year. I really appreciated that, and I loved all the interaction and screen time that the 3 leads had together.
Yeah, I do feel like it was there was definitely a concerted effort, I think, to really let the 3 of them spend a lot of quality time together in this one. So I appreciated that. Jamie, where are you?
I really enjoyed it. I got tremendous entertainment value from it. I watched it twice. I was fortunate enough to be able to, the last 2 days, get a rewatch in of the 3 episodes. So I have seen it all 2 times now. And boy, this thing's packed with Easter eggs, which I get a kick out of that to a point. I think the character work for the most part was good. I don't have any problem going straight to ranking. I'll say right now, I think Earth X was a better crossover, but this one certainly had moments that I thought were standouts. And that's not saying I find any of it particularly bad. Some of it a little bit head-scratching, may or may not be on purpose. But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it the second time as much as I did the first, which I guess is a ringing endorsement to it. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they try next, of course, which we'll get to that soon enough. Can I just go ahead and say Batwoman needs her own series yesterday?
Yeah.
I think it's
You
gonna happen.
can.
I mean, they're already working on the pilot. They're shooting the pilot. It's going to happen.
And while we're at it, Lois and Clark need a return as well. So, yeah.
I agree with that, too. Yep.
Just give CW over to the DC Universe, cancel everything else, and every night of the week, 2 hours a night, give me nothing but my DC shows. I'm
in. I think that sounds like a wonderful idea. I feel like maybe some random people who watch whatever other shows the CW puts on might have a little bit to say about that.
If they would ever cancel Supernatural ever in life, they could probably do exactly what Jamie's talking about.
I've never seen an episode of that show, but my God, it's been on for what, like 35 years now?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, I think the pilot aired on the day of my birth, and it's still going. So,
and he's like 53. So.
And I'm an old bastard. I support your idea. I have a hard enough time keeping up with the shows that we already have, so that would be my only concern. Is I'm like, I don't know if I could fit 2 more hours a week in. If they put something else out to pasture, maybe that could work.
Or space it out as far as releasing as, like seasonally. Like my ideal world is every television series should be 10 to 12 episodes max. Because I find that most of the shows that get up into the high teens to low 20s for their episode counts have a tendency of chasing themselves in circles or dragging things out unnecessarily, versus that shorter season forces them to be more concise with their storytelling. Hence, most of the programming that is considered "quote unquote" the best. And guys, I know it's all subjective. You gonna ring the bell for that? All right, thank you. Anyway, like Game of Thrones and stuff that's on HBO, those sort of things. The stuff on most streaming services about those distances. So in my ideal world, you have like a spring, summer, winter, fall schedule and release a couple series at a time during those seasons and have them be about 10 to 12 episodes each. I think you could manage it then. But yeah, having a free-for-all where it's during the common network television release schedule and having 22 episodes per, that would be insanity to keep up with.
Brett and I have talked about this before a lot on both of our shows. And yeah, what you're saying, the structure in terms of like 10 to 13 episodes, that's like a cable / streaming principle that like gets used a lot. But it also, like, the networks will tend to use it for summer shows, like spring and summer shows. And the CW does that. Like, they have the 100 and a couple of other like summer shows that are here. They fill the void of 3 months or however long it is till all the DC shows come back. They've even got a couple of shows that they're doing like that right now with Legends and Black Lightning. So it's, yeah, and those are 16 episodes, but still, I agree with you. I think that the classic 20 to 23 episode structure of a season is starting to wane. At least I hope it's starting to wane, and I hope we are leaning more towards the smaller scheduled seasons, because I do think you could absolutely make a lot more hay. And I think they're starting to realize that, yeah, there is a better depth of storytelling with those types of Batwoman shouldn't be a 23 episode season. It should not. It should be a 10 to 13 episode season, absolutely. And I think it would be a fantastic 10 to 13 episode season if they did it that way. I think it would do very well, and I hope that's what they're playing for it is.
Well, and I know you guys have had this discussion ad nauseum, if streaming truly is the future of our media consumption for this stuff, then I don't see any other way they're going to be able to do it, because a streaming service packing out that for something that's not like a 20 to 25 minute animated show or something, that's just too much.
Yeah, I agree.
I enjoy the traditional full-length 22, 23 episode seasons. I agree with you that for the seasons that are maybe not quite as strong, that they feel their length more. But if a season is really strong all the way through, then I'm happy to have it be that long. That said, while I don't feel like I need the Superman show on the CW, I would be ecstatic to get it. I love this take on Superman. I want this Batwoman show. They're making the pilot. I want to see it. I would let's say every single CW show comes back next year. I would be happy to chop off 5 episodes of each of them currently if that's what it took to get Superman and Batwoman shows also.
Yeah, I'm in for that either. I'm in for it either way. I mean, if they're 20 episode seasons, so be it. But I'm just saying, I think they can have more product to a higher quality level if they do less episodes per season.
Yeah, because and we've talked about this before, but you get rid of filler episodes when you shrink down the episode count. Like, how many?
A periodical filler episode, or something that maybe isn't part of the main story. Well, I mean, take the Hank and Dawn episode of Titans last week. That's really not an episode that I think you needed for that series, but by God, that was an outstanding episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was the best episode of the show so far.
It's strong. It's up there. It's certainly in the discussion. But to have 1 or 2 episodes like that is fine. But and I know you guys are bigger fans of Arrow than I am, because I've outright quit watching Arrow for the last month. Just I can't take it anymore. But it's just cut out the stuff that feels like it's chasing its own tail. I mean, the reason I got driven nuts with Arrow last year, I literally felt like I saw the same episode 5 or 6 times. And I think that shortening a season would cut that out and improve the overall quality of the show. And I think that's applicable anywhere, not just to shows that I'm not, a running fan of.
I bet those 5 or 6 episodes you saw and repeat were in the first half of last season.
I think they kind of mixed up, but yeah, more toward the first and the latter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've talked about that too. Yeah, that was definitely one of those unique situations. Yeah, but Brent, you've said at least twice now that they're making the pilot for Batwoman. We know that for sure.
Yeah, okay. They're definitely doing the pilot.
Are you sure? I'm pretty sure. Like, what I saw this week was, hey, we hope they make the pilot.
I'm positive they're making the pilot. I've seen it in multiple places. I'd have to dig through to find where I'd save those articles. But even if we didn't know that, think of the track record that Berlanti and company have on the CW. They haven't had a DC show yet that they wanted to do a pilot for that didn't get one and then picked up. Everything has done it. I mean, starting with when Barry first came to the Arrow in season 2 of Arrow, he was going to have a backdoor pilot on the show. They upgraded him to a full pilot. Boom. He's in his 5th season and just had his 100th episode last week. Supergirl, pilot. It's in season 4. Legends is in season 4, shorter season. But yeah, and then, of course, Black Lightning. They have never done a pilot for one of these shows since Arrow started without it getting picked up. Now, ironically, there was a Green Arrow pilot that was going to have the guy from who was... Or not a Green Arrow, there was an Aquaman pilot, prior to Arrow. With Justin Hartley one. Yeah. Now that one didn't get picked up. And I don't know who made that one, so I don't know if that's a Berlanti one or not. But since Stephen Amell's Arrow, they've never failed to get it. And the CW has expanded their programming. They now have 6 nights a week that they're putting these shows on. And so they have the time slots for it, especially when they start doing the juggling that they're doing with Legends and Black Lightning for the second half, where they're going to share a time slot and Black Lightning is going to finish and then Legends is coming in. I can't promise that there's going to be a Batwoman show, but I will tell you, I would bet significant sums of money that it's going to at least get like a 10 episode season 1.
Well, okay, so I'm looking it up as we're talking, and they're talking about like casting breakdowns for a Batwoman pilot. So it sounds like that is the case. I missed the announcement that was official. So, or maybe it isn't. Maybe it's still all assumed and rumor and whatnot. But I just know that this week, because of Elseworlds, all of the headlines I saw were, should CW move forward with Batwoman? And I was like, well, I thought they were going to, so why is it a question? So that's where my confusion came from. But yeah, as recent as a few days ago, there was a story about essentially who these other characters in the pilot would be. So yeah, it does seem like that's the case, which I'm all for, because I didn't get into my spoiler-free thoughts myself, but I will say more Batwoman, because I barely got any Batwoman here. So I enjoyed the crossover, but I'm kind of let down honestly. I feel like they tried to shove in too much in those 3 episodes and let me down on a couple things because they weren't able to fully pay it off. And I think Batwoman is one of those things where they did this big to-do about Batwoman is coming to the Arrowverse and we got Ruby Rose and they did this, and it was she was pretty in and out, and I thought that was going to be the crux of the crossover, but it was just kind of a stop along the way. I enjoyed it, but
I will say I do feel like most of the moments in here that I truly loved were fan service more than actually something that was really solid storytelling, much like what you're saying with Batwoman. And I loved every second she was on the screen as Kate and as Batwoman, but without her there, it's still the same story.
Absolutely. There's no. Yes, completely agree with that.
I will disagree. This story could have been told without her, but at the same time, them choosing to include her, they don't just do that on a whim. They don't just make this amazing costume on a whim. They have future plans for her. And while I haven't heard any announcements, I would not be at all surprised if she showed back up again this year on one of the other shows, most likely being Arrow.
And the fact that she is on the same Earth as Arrow and Flash, that is helpful. But I wouldn't expect to see her show back up until her pilot, unless they need another sweeps thing. I mean, now I get why they got Ruby Rose, because it's like, oh, she filmed this in 2 days. She was in and out. So, because I was impressed. I was like, oh, you got her. She's kind of an up-and-comer. She's been doing movies. She's gonna do CW, and it's like, oh yeah, because it was a weekend job. As for what happens next, we will see. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they have hopes for it, but I don't know. I just feel a little misled that was kind of their like big sell for Elseworlds, and it turned out to not really be the case.
Well, they did leave her. They did leave it open at the end. You know, like they left it very open for her to return for sure. And we do know for certain. I saw a couple of articles, and I saw the numbers myself. The numbers for the Arrow episode of this crossover did go up. They were up over normal averages because of her, specifically her presence in the episode. So they know that they have something there. They know they have attention with her being on screen. So I think that alone is enough. You know, that plus them leaving it open for her to return, I think that's enough for them to go forward with it. But yeah, I remember the upfronts last year, you know, like before the upfronts, you know, the big fall. I don't know if you guys watch them at all, but working for a CW affiliate, I see them every year. And so they have the big upfront presentation for their new calendar, for their new catalog of what's happening, right? And Amell had been tweeting for days before that he had this big secret that he couldn't share. He couldn't wait to share because he was going to bring it up. And so I'm at the station, we're all watching it, and he says Batwoman, and I literally like had an emotional reaction out loud. I was like, what? Batwoman? And yeah, there was a lot of promise, and there was a lot of pomp and circumstance, if you will, that was placed upon her appearance in this crossover. And yeah, it was not what they hyped it up to be. I will say that.
I've actually wondered if they've changed the story for the crossover after that announcement. I have wondered.
It does almost feel that way. Yeah, because the announcement felt like, oh, that's the event. These guys go to Gotham, and then it all of a sudden became about Elseworlds, and I was like, I think you might be onto something.
Now, if that's the case, not spoiling it yet, they did announce next year's, which will give them more time to plan it, more time to shoot it, which can tighten up some of those feelings of feeling like, well, maybe this part didn't quite work. But I do kind of wonder if there was a pivot in there of, we're going to keep Batwoman because we want to go forward with another show because these are all huge hits for the network, but we really want to tell this other story. And we can gauge how well they pulled it off. But I think I haven't seen anything that said that, but I do really feel like I've also watched it twice. Looking back, I'm like, I do think they planned on having more of her originally instead of just putting her in one part.
Right. Yes, I forget what I was going to say. I lost my train of thought, but no, it is true. It felt like that was it was going to be a bigger deal, and it was less so. And there were other things like that in this episode or in this crossover where I was like, oh my God, they're doing this, and it was kind of in and out really quick, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess they're kind of doing that. Like it was just a nod. Same thing with like the big thing about the announcement of Lois Lane. It's like, yeah, Lois is in this, but like she's not that important.
No.
So like they made a big deal about, oh, you're gonna meet Lois Lane, and okay, cool, and she's kind of there, but didn't make much of an impression on me.
I really felt like adding her in there was also kind of a soft pitch to see reactions to potentially get his series in there as well, because obviously there are some events that happen with Lois and Clark, and we're not over that wall yet, but the setup is certainly there for them as well as it was with Batwoman, if not more so.
Yeah, and Bitsy Tulloch, the actress that plays Lois in Elseworlds, is definitely not a stranger to any of this network TV stuff. She was on Grimm for 6 seasons, and she's a known television quantity. So, yeah, she's definitely, like, when she got cast in that role, I was like, oh, that's that wasn't just kind of like an up and comer or somebody we didn't know. It's somebody that actually is known, like in television circles. It's like, okay, if you're casting somebody that's known as Lois, then clearly you're thinking down the road here. You're not. She's good, and we thought this. We thought she was going to appear in Supergirl before we got to Elseworlds. We were incorrect on that because we were horribly misled by one of the titles of this season's Supergirl episodes. I think Brent's still upset about that.
It was called Man of Steel. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I was like, which one are we talking about? Oh, I gotcha. No, and I think you're right. I mean, I think that they want the right parts and pieces in case they want to move forward.
And that's exactly what they have.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that for me, again, this is just for me, I think it started really strong. I think the second part was really great, but of course I'm super biased. And the third part for me, it started falling apart a little bit. It was still good, but not great. And there were some cracks and chinks in there. And I didn't totally love the way it all wrapped up. But I still, I look forward to these every year, and it is interesting. Jamie mentioned last year's the Earth X crossover, which was so huge, and just like I loved it. I freaking loved it. And this one, it almost felt like they were like, last year was too big. Let's just go smaller. Like we don't have the we don't have the stamina to do that again. So let's go smaller again. So it did feel a little more reined in than what we got last year.
Yeah. That's
they cut
exactly
an
what they
entire
did.
series with the biggest cast out of it, no less.
And they went back to the structure that they used for Invasion, because last year with Crisis on Earth X, they pretty much ditched the idea of them being separate episodes of each show, and they just said this is 4 parts of one giant 2-night event. Whereas, like, with Invasion, they're like, okay, this is an episode of Arrow. This is an episode of Flash. This is an episode of Legends. And they went back to that structure for Elseworlds, because it's like you had everybody's opening titles at the beginning going into Elseworlds. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. They scaled this one back in a number of ways. And I think it was and I think I even remember them saying, from a budget standpoint, it was just going to be really difficult to replicate what they did with Crisis on Earth X. And I can understand that, because that was just, the church battle alone from that crossover last year was insane. I knew, and that helped me going into Elseworlds this year, because I knew we weren't going to get that. I was already prepared for the fact that we weren't going to get that with Elseworlds, and that they were going to go in a different, more compartmentalized direction. And I think that helped me, not having the expectations of Crisis on Earth X on me going into this helped me enjoy Elseworlds more, I think.
Yeah, and you can't always go bigger. At a certain point, you're as big as you can be. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with switching it up and changing it up. It just had a different vibe, I guess. And personally, I love Legends, so I miss them. White Canary is my favorite. So, but it's all good. Going into the actual pieces, the first episode is The Flash. So part 1. So this is where we get the setup for reality has changed. So Barry and Oliver wake up in each other's lives. So Oliver wakes up as Barry in Barry's bed, married to Iris, which they promoted the hell out of that moment in all the different commercials and everything. And then Barry wakes up getting his ass kicked by Diggle as now Oliver Queen, and they're the only two people in the world who realize that this has happened. We meet the doctor, Jeremy Davies, Dr. what was it? Deegan. I wanted to say Deagle, but that's the old lady from Gremlins. Although she would also be a very good DC villain. But yeah, so, we meet Jeremy Davies. He is approached by the Monitor. The Monitor gives him the book, and all sorts of shenanigans ensue. And so we have Oliver, who is now the Flash. We have Barry, who is now the Green Arrow, and they're the only two who know it. And they have to now convince, at least in this one, because it's an episode of The Flash, as you were just saying, Ray, it's a little more of a Flash episode than it is just an all things episode. They have to convince Team Flash that this is a real thing, that this is really what happened. And they end up getting locked up, as we mentioned earlier. Barry makes a plea to Iris, and they're free to go try and solve this issue. I guess I should throw out the spoiler warning that we're going to now just speak freely. So if you've not watched Elseworlds, you should watch it. Go home, watch it. It's on CW app. It's free. Because, yeah, we're going to speak freely about it. So, yeah, that is the first part of Elseworlds. Now that I put out the spoiler warning, they jump to Earth 38 to get Kara and Clark and, again, Lois. They're at the Kent farm. And to enlist their help. At the same time, Amazo is set loose on the city, and so they all have to come back and defeat Amazo, but Barry has to do it as Green Arrow, and Oliver has to do it as the Flash, and then Superman and Supergirl are there as backup. So that's kind of how the first part of it goes. We can kind of jump in as far as what you guys liked and how did you feel about this first part. Ray, why don't you kick us off?
I think out of all of them, like, this was where we got the most humor. And it makes sense, right? Because you're starting off from this real fish out of water perspective where, like, you've thrown two of our major heroes into the opposite situations, and they literally, like, it's one of those cases where it's dramatic irony, because as the audience we know exactly what each of those characters have been through if we've watched Arrow and the Flash this season, but they don't know. So they're, like, out of sorts in so many different ways, not only because they're not where they should be, but also because they don't know what's happening in each other's lives. And we're just looking like, oh yeah, no, that's no good. Like, it did. This had the most humor. I'd say probably my favorite part of this episode had to be the arrows at the Smallville farm. Like, that was,
yes.
That was just pure comedy. And you know what my favorite part of that was? It wasn't even just the fact that he finally got Oliver back for that. It was the point right after that where Oliver was really trying to, like, get Barry's emotions going, and, like, he started, like, can you not do anything without your wife in your ear? Are you serious right now? Felicity invented quarterbacking. I don't think you can go 9 hours without some sappy motivational speech. And I'm just sitting there the entire time.
It was a little meta too, wasn't it?
It was extreme. Dude, I will tell you, that could have been any host of angry emails or Twitter comments saying word for word. I feel like it was one of those moments where they took some actual complaints that people have had about those characters, and they just threw it into dialogue to basically point a finger at it and go, yeah, whatever, we're poking fun at it.
Exactly. Like, we know. The arrows part, oh my god, I'd forgotten about it, because it has now been, 3 years since the Brave and the Bold crossover, I guess? And when Ollie, fired those arrows into the Flash, even then I was like, oh man, what a dick. And so to see that come back years later and Barry finally gets his revenge, like, it made me so happy. I like that they called it out, because it allowed me to remember what had happened, because it's been years. And then the fact that he was able to pull it off made me very happy, because Ollie sometimes Ollie needs to get smacked down a little bit.
Oh, he deserved it. He absolutely deserved it after all these years. It was extremely satisfying.
this episode had so many of these moments and callbacks, but I got to draw attention to how funny I thought Stephen Amell's performance was as Oliver as Barry. I saw so many people online surprised at how funny he was, and I'm like, I actually remember him from I've seen him in other roles, including New Girl, which if you don't watch it is a comedy, and he was hysterical in like the 2 episodes he had a guest spot in. It's like he can do comedy. It's just not his character he plays on these shows typically. This whole episode, I think I don't know which episode had the most fan service, but man, this episode had so many callbacks to things within the universe and a couple things without of the universe. But I mean, Amazo's a callback to Arrow season 2 and Ivo Industries or whatever they called it, because Anthony Ivo was in that season, and of course the Mirakuru hybrid whatever that was used to help Amazo pull the powers. That was a really cool introduction of his character, I thought, or of this android. I thought we were never going to see Amazo because they had kind of already touched on it a few years ago.
Right, because didn't they make the ship Amazo?
They did.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, come on, like that's not Amazo. So I'm
but
with you. I was tickled
that
we got the real Amazo.
Yes, the time they did that though was before Barry Allen came to the show. And everything changed when Barry Allen came to the show. I don't know if you guys watched Smallville. I happily watched all 10 seasons. So the jump to Earth 38, I might have rewound and watched it a couple times. Hearing that theme song, Somebody Save Me, I loved it.
I had a big smile on my face watching that first night.
Unfortunately, it got spoiled for me, but I didn't quite realize why. All of a sudden, I just saw people posting stuff about somebody save, and then as soon as I was watching it, I was like, oh, I got it. But yes, it was so awesome. Like, I love that they did it. It made me so happy.
And of course, they were on the set from Smallville. That was the Kent Farm from Smallville.
Oh, that I did not catch.
Yeah,
I didn't know if it actually was. I mean, it certainly looked like it, but I didn't know if they actually bothered.
I mean, it's all CW. They reuse sets all the time, and I mean, the Queen Mansion was the Luthor Mansion. And the X Mansion in the X-Men movies.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
Well, and that's the crazy, because Smallville technically it didn't start as a CW show. It started as a WB show, but of course WB partnered with CBS and it became the CW. So the connection is there. It just isn't. It's a different connection, but great callback. Yeah. Like I was telling you, Brent, Shonda got a real kick out of it because she is a huge fan of Smallville and watched way more of it than I did. That was like her. That's how Superman became her favorite character, like her favorite hero. That's why she's a huge Superman fan, because she loved that show. So when that part of the crossover came up, yeah, she was very amused by that. Very much enjoyed it.
I'm going to touch on Ray's point about the humor in this episode. There was definitely plenty of it there, and as both of you other folks mentioned, it's very meta. The fact that Barry realizes where he's at and who he is, or not Barry, well, I guess kind of Barry, kind of Oliver, and he says, "Oh, Barry, what have you done this time?" Immediately blaming him for screwing up the timeline. I thought that was great. The two of them meeting up and realizing that they're in the same predicament, and he's like, that he comes to the realization that Oliver, he's not in a hurry to do anything about it. He's like, just real chill about it. We'll figure this out. Don't worry. We'll talk to Cisco. And, the realization comes to him that Oliver woke up next to Iris in bed. And then he's immediately, we have to fix this right now. I got a good chuckle out of that too. Probably the biggest laugh that I had in the entire episode was Oliver meeting Clark. And he's kind of got his posture upright, and Barry looks over, are you puffing out your chest? I got an enormous chuckle out of that. And
absolutely.
Ralph realizing all the stuff that's going on and saying, man, it's not even Tuesday. That's another one of those meta moments. So
that's a good meta moment, yes.
It just there was a lot of stuff being played with in here. That Amazo fight for me was on par with the best moments I've had with the entire DCCW run of any of the shows. Just a huge geek out moment for me in that, and the way that was handled aesthetically and character wise, I thought was really well done. Definitely one of the highlights of this entire crossover, and really the DCCW overall for me. I that's very commendable in my opinion.
I also want to give Grant Gustin and Stephen Amell some credit, because one of the major points of this particular episode is the idea that they really have to start acting like the other in order to get through this. And, because they're very obviously throughout the last 4 seasons of The Flash and the last 6 seasons of Arrow, we've seen how different Oliver and Barry are. And so the idea now is, now that you are the other person, you have to act like the other person. And they were kind of reluctant. That was the only way that they were going to be able to operate the way that they were in the bodies that they were in. And I want to give them credit, because I really feel like they did a good job of doing that. Especially, I mean, like you were saying, Brent, Amell can be funny and he can be like carefree and loose. And yes, I think he did pull that off really well. But I really was kind of impressed with how Gustin was able. I mean, aside from the funny joke of speaking in the the gravelly, Christian Bale type Arrow voice, "You have failed this city." Okay, yes, hilarious joke. But like when it came time to take Amazo down, like he went full Oliver, and it was kind of scary for a second. It's like, whoa, all right, we're not used to seeing him in this particular. And he jumped, he got to it really quick. He got to a dark place really quick, and I think he did a really solid job of going to that dark place and becoming the Oliver in that moment when it was necessary.
And at the same time, Stephen Amell's Flash just got the biggest grin on his face and gave a huge thumbs up to him. They totally embodied the other person's character. And that is something that I think they should be given just all the credit in the world for doing. They had to show the chemistry that those two had together as their respective characters, as actors, able to take on the mannerisms of each other and really kind of jump back and forth as the character was struggling with who their identity was. For me, that stuff worked really well. And I do think that was most shown in this first part.
Yeah, I mean, this is where they had the most fun with it, and I'm sure that Stephen Amell especially was probably having a lot of fun just because he didn't have to play the, super serious and angry Oliver. He got to show his lighter side. It was probably a nice change of pace for him, and even for Gustin, who's, he can play serious plenty on The Flash. He's not as fun-loving as he was in season 1, but still, like, being able for them to play in different sandboxes and mix things up, I'm sure that they were super happy to be able to do that. I want to also concur with Jamie said about the Amazo thing. Like, and that's why I thought this first episode was so strong just overall. Like, I think they did a great job of like setting up the predicament. They had a lot of fun with Oliver and Barry getting used to and figuring out what the heck was going on and trying to live in each other's lives and having fun with that. But then to get that threat of Amazo, I remember seeing the poster for this and Amazo was on it, but I didn't realize that's who it was supposed to be. I was like, oh my God, what's this giant robot? What the hell is this? And I was so happy to find out that that's what it was. And when they realized that it was what is it? It's what do you call it when the initials spell out something?
Anagram or something?
Is it an anagram?
Or acronym?
Acronym?
Yeah. It's an acronym.
Yeah. So when they realize, when he says the acronym and he goes, Amazo, well, sometimes they just drop in your lap, don't they? I love that. Because, like seeing The Flash, Green Lantern, Superman, Supergirl all take on Amazo, it was just pure geeky goodness. And it was just a great action scene. And even though it was Oliver is the Flash and Barry is the Green Arrow, it was still really, really awesome. So yeah, I was so happy and satisfied with this, and I thought it was very clever how they made Amazo accurate to what he's supposed to be, but still gave some sort of logic as to why he did or why he can do what he does. So overall this one is awesome. And then I have to call out the fact that I think for years now on The Flash, fans have called out that prison for things, being like, how do those people eat? How do those people go to the bathroom? Because I know I've thought it, being like, is there a toilet?
We've all thought it.
And I think this is the first time they've ever addressed it. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
and so the fact that they did, I was like, oh, good. I'm glad. I want to know that the Weathered Wizard can go to the bathroom when he needs to. Like, I just need to know that. So I thought that was hilarious. And then the fact that they made it they made it a plot point was really smart too.
Before we go to the next part because we're kind of getting to the end there. I have to just mention the moment when Cisco looks at Clark and says, "Who are you?" and he gives a friend and the shirt rip. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. Sure, it's probably pure fan service, but that's okay. We all like to be serviced as fans sometimes, and I thought it was great.
And to that end, like, I will say, and this came out more obviously later on in the crossover, but it kind of started here because I like the conversation that Clark has with Kara before Barry and Oliver show up, and Tyler Hoechlin's portrayal of Superman on the CW has gotten a lot of attention, obviously, for a variety of reasons. And one of the easiest things that people have said about his portrayal is that it's totally Christopher Reeve. It's totally Donner era Superman. And I feel like it's starting with his scenes in this particular episode, they went away from that. He's not. I think we can definitively say at this point, at least I can definitively say, in my opinion, that his version of Superman on the CW is not. It's further away from the Christopher Reeve, Richard Donner version than we necessarily thought he was in season 2. Like, when he popped up in season 2 of Supergirl, and he's like, "Yes, Mr. White, no, Mr. White," and he's got the glasses and he's clearly doing it there. But I think they've taken steps in this crossover to move him further away from that, and maybe, again, like we were saying earlier, that's posturing for the future and the potential of him doing something with him and his own show down the road, perhaps. But I think that this was the beginning of doing a good job of distancing him from that and making this version of Superman truly his own, to where it's not so easy to say that he is a knockoff of a previous Superman that we've all been exposed to. Yeah, even with that cool Easter egg.
I don't think it's a fair criticism or comparison to say that he is emulating Reeves, Kent, or Superman, either one. I mean, certainly there are nods to it, but I mean, where don't you see that? I mean, that's an iconic series of films, and Reeve was an iconic portrayal of it. So, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that. But as far as the actual character, I don't think he's copy and paste at any real point, other than some of these nods that they're doing toward it, in my opinion, anyway.
No,
I don't think so either. I never felt that he was completely aping Reeve. He was just doing it was in a similar vein, but I don't feel like he was ever doing a Christopher Reeve impression, and I still don't think that. But you're right. The more we get to see him, and it's been sparingly, they've been keeping him, off to the side most of the time.
We didn't see him at all last season.
Right. And so I feel like the more we see of him, the more he gets the opportunity to make the role his own. And I think he has. I think, most people seem to be really happy with him, and I think he does a great job. And that scene, you're right, before Oliver and Barry show up, you do get a nice kind of resetting the stage of here's what's been going on with Superman and Lois and Kara. I love calling out that, we've been gone and we left you to protect the Earth because we know that you can handle it. To give some sort of logic as to why we haven't seen him in a little while.
Yeah, I'm not the historian for the DCCW the way that Brent is, and I'm not sure even the DCCW people are to him, but it's there was a lot of shade thrown last year at the crossover because Superman did not show up to help out in that crisis. And I think the explanation of why he wasn't there, I don't know if this is a retcon or if this was something that was said way back then and I just don't remember it, is pretty doggone brilliant, if you ask me.
Well, last year with Crisis, there were people who were complaining he wasn't there, but the story, it would have made no sense for him to have been there because the whole point of Crisis was they were going to Barry's wedding. He'd never even met Barry. Why would he be going to this wedding? Mm-hmm. But they did towards the end of the season last year, and this was something that I effectively demanded. I was like, they have to address this situation, and they did. They mentioned Superman was on Argo. And so they mentioned that last year. The show does have, and I think Batwoman has set itself up to deal with this in a better light, I think. It's unavoidable. You can't have Supergirl bringing in all these Superman characters and not reference and acknowledge why is he not showing up at these times, and you would expect them to. And now they have given us, by the time we get to the end of this, the, like it or not, a perfectly valid excuse for him to be gone the remainder of this year and probably until next year's crossover, when I would fully expect to see him again.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's totally fine. What did you guys think of Lois? I kind of already tipped my hand a bit. I thought she was fine, but she did not blow me away. She did not make an amazing first impression. I was like, okay, she's all right.
Yeah, I don't think she was given enough to do to give fair judgment to what the actress is capable of in the role. I thought Lois was really limited, and I thought she was there essentially to help further Clark's arc of the story.
I completely agree with that, Jamie. And as somebody that was a huge fan of Grimm, I've seen Bitsy Tulloch before. I know what she can do when she's given like more to chew in terms of dialogue and acting and performance and whatnot. She's got way more in her than what she was given in this crossover. So honestly, I don't think we have enough to give a fair assessment either. I'll say this: I'd like to see more of her. I would like to see more of that dynamic. I would like to see her add more of her Lois, because I even think that, and it was funny when she was cast, that was one of those cases where, originally I was like, you know what, she is closer. Like, if you were gonna cast, originally I was like, yeah, she could play like a Margot Kidder style Lois, but really she didn't do that either in this case. She was making the role her own for the very brief minutes that we saw her. And yeah, I would like to see more before I can definitively determine how great of a Lois she is. For now, I think she was serviceable, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Physically speaking, I think she has a very, I'm not going to say they can be mistaken for twins or anything, but she definitely has a Margot Kidder quality to her facially and things like that. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and I don't know that was, purposeful in her casting or not, but I definitely looked at her in several moments and thought, just a little bit, that facial expression, that mannerism, that look that she just has, very, very similar to that. And I find nothing wrong with that. I'm just observation.
She has mentioned in an interview recently that she did speak with the producers about the potential of some sort of Superman show. That one of the things they're looking at in this crossover is not just the reaction to Batwoman, but the reaction to Superman and Lois. And I have thoughts for what they might do with that show. Maybe we save them for the end for when we see how they wrap up this story. But I think that is something they're looking at. And I don't think they cast her thinking we're only going to see her in this one time and never see her again. So I really do feel like this doesn't feel like, times in early... It doesn't feel like, say, the Huntress in the first couple seasons of Arrow, where you see her in just 2 or 3 episodes and never comes back. Yeah, I really believe that they are going to.
I'm still waiting for her to come back, by the way.
Hey, I'd be fine with it too, but I'm not. At the same time, I'm not surprised they don't, because it was.
Wait. Shh. Brent, plug your ears real quick, okay? Just for like 5 seconds.
Okay.
I'll trade her even up for Felicity right now. Right now.
I wouldn't. I think I'm probably the only one of the 4 of us that didn't like her.
Huntress would make a terrible Overwatch.
No, I don't even want
that's not a trade I would make.
Felicity gone. That's all I'm saying. I just want Felicity gone. That's all I want. They keep teasing me with the promise of killing her, and she's still there. So
let's trade her for somebody else. I'm sorry, guys. I wasn't that big on I'm more excited to see the Huntress on the big screen than I am to see her again in the DCCW.
I'll come right out and say it. I'll trade literally anybody in the Arrows cast stable, with the exception of Mr. Terrific, for her right now. Anybody. All of them, all for one. I don't care. Just move them all away.
That's and we're about to talk about the Arrow episode. Man, do you want to sit out, Jamie? Good grief!
Oh man,
that is yikes.
Before we move on for this, though, I do want to address this, because I know I'm not the brightest bulb in the chandelier most times, but the reason that I watched this twice is because I'm pretty sure I must have missed something somewhere. Did we ever at any point get an explanation of why Deegan changed basically reality on this earth, but Barry and Oliver remember who they were in their, quote, previous life, and nobody else does? Did we ever get an explanation for why that happened, other than for our benefit as the audience?
I'm going to tell you, I think we got a partial that you can apply to some headcanon. And we have to jump to the next episode to get there, to when Oliver and Deegan meet.
Right. Yeah. Deegan gives a very vague... He makes a very vague comment about not, it takes practice and not really knowing what he's doing.
Oh, that's where the Flash's powers went.
Yeah.
He was trying to turn himself into the Flash. But he didn't know.
But as for why they're the only two that remember it, that is just cuz.
Well, that's where I would headcanon to say what Deegan intended to do didn't happen. And because it didn't happen, it changed the spell, if you will. Or as the Monitor put it, he didn't think big enough. And so he just screwed up. He was ineffectual. They never flat out tell us that, though. I'm extending the logic of he screwed up the thing with trying to get Flash's powers to begin with.
It's just like how they never... another thing they never told us in this particular first episode was they never told us exactly how they beat Amazo. We know how, and I was actually kind of proud of this because, as anybody that has listened to our shows knows, I am not nearly as well versed in the comics as any of the three of you are, or anyone else on our own network is. So I was actually really excited that because I saw like a clip from a Justice League animated show where they fought Amazo in the past, that I knew exactly how they were going to beat Amazo in this episode. But they don't tell you that the arrow that Barry is firing at him is a kryptonite arrow. They never say that, even though that's exactly what it is, and you see it. They never say it. They just indicate that if Amazo has all other strengths, he also has all other weaknesses, and you can deduce it yourself, but they don't tell you that that's exactly what he's done.
Especially when they've already established that. We may not know how, but Oliver does have kryptonite arrows. Because he had one in Crisis last year.
Well, because it's made much clearer in the next couple episodes that it's a kryptonite arrow. I think especially like the final episode, then it's made super clear. But yeah, then you have to think back and go, oh yeah, he must have been using that with Amazo as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is not something... They did not babysit the audience through it. They assume if you're watching this, you have some inherent knowledge of the overall characters and these specific versions going into it.
Right.
So with that, should we go on to episode 2?
Yes. So this episode, they do defeat Amazo, which again, super awesome.
We're moving to episode 2. Nobody said the line? Nobody's going to say the line? You gonna
That's where I'm getting. Let me get there. Unless there's a different line that.
The last line from episode 1 is what I was going to say.
Yes, that's where we're going.
Okay.
So, oh my God, Cisco, he sees the Monitor and he's like, "Hey, I vibed this vision. There was this guy. I think that it has something to do with what's going on. Let me show you." He shows them the Monitor handing the book off to Deegan. Deegan.
Dr. Destiny, if you will.
Deegan. Not Deagle from Gremlins, not Deacon from Waterworld. Gizmo Kaka. So, after they vibe this, Oliver, who still has the Flash's powers, he draws what they saw, which is the Monitor speaking to Deegan, and that drawing was done by Jim Lee, which was super cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I saw
that.
I didn't know
Jim
that
Lee.
either.
Yeah, he tweeted it out going, "Hey, thanks guys for letting me be a part of the crossover in a small way." So yeah, he drew that. Jim Lee drew that.
Nice.
And as they're talking about it, then Oliver goes, "Well, I know where we need to go." They show the Wayne Tower. And he says, "We're going to Gotham City." And I definitely geeked out and fist pumped and was like, "Oh, I want to watch it right now."
Yep. Same here. I just had the biggest grin on my face. I'm like, "Oh, I cannot wait. Finally." I didn't even care that that it was on Earth 1 because that was like the official confirmation. Like Brent and I had been speculating for months. Like, okay, where do we want Kate Kane and where do we want Gotham to actually be? And I think we'd both agree that we wanted it to be on Earth 38 because we wanted to see that Earth get more developed. But obviously, no, that's not the direction they went in. It's on Earth 1, but it's
not going to matter a year from now.
No, it's not.
Okay, comic book readers, those of us that have never read that particular comic don't know entirely what you're talking about.
Look, if you want me to put up a spoiler wall for a 40-year-old book, man.
No, well, we'll get there. We'll have to address it. We will get there.
Well, and we also can't assume that it's going to be accurate to the comic.
It's not. Not as
a
much.
like,
yes.
I mean, this was called Elseworlds. I didn't see no Gotham by Gaslight up in here.
No Red Sun. But they're doing the Red Daughter, so we'll get there.
So we do jump to Arrow. So Elseworlds Part 2, the gang is going to Gotham City. First, they stop in and check in with Team Arrow, who I haven't seen in a while because, like Jamie, I jumped off Arrow. I haven't seen any of the last 2 seasons, so I'm pretty lost. So when there was, I loved the intro with Barry taking Ollie's place. But when they were like, "Oh, I was in prison for this long," I was like, "Oh, I guess that's what I've been missing on Arrow." I had no idea.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say you've been missing it.
I wouldn't say I've been missing it either.
Wow. Man.
So
I will tell you, you've been missing it.
I'm sorry, guys. I am not into. Anyway, I don't want to get into that whole thing. I'm
no,
not a fan.
for me it wasn't like I wasn't doing a Jamie of like screw this show. It was more just I couldn't keep up with them all, and my least favorite had to fall off the radar, and that was Arrow.
How about this? If you don't intend to ever catch up, just on the CW app, because it's still going to be there, look up Slide Redemption a couple episodes ago. It's like one long epic fight scene, the whole thing, and it was just beautifully done.
Yeah, I think at the very least, I don't know about Jamie, but at the very least, Andy, I think you might enjoy that episode. That was them getting back to like what I think a lot of us enjoyed about that show from the beginning, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I have every intention of catching up on it at some point. I just haven't yet. So we do check in, and fortunately for someone like me who is a little out of the loop on Arrow, I was able to kind of go, okay, here's who's still around, and here's what's going on, and Felicity and Ollie are still having problems, those crazy kids. I hope everything's okay.
Oh, man.
And
so I thought I was harsh about it. Wow. All right.
I'm not gonna trade Felicity out for a dormouse like Jamie though. I still like her, but it's just I'm like, we're still fighting whether we should be together or not. That's kind of where I left you guys 2 years ago.
It's there's a little bit more involved with it than that, Andy. But if you're gonna get caught up, we won't tell you exactly what has happened.
I'm fine. I'm good either way. I'm not obviously not too upset about getting spoiled because then I would have kept up on it, but it's all good. So we check in, we see Diggle. How's Diggle? Oh, it's good to see him. I miss that guy. You see Mr. Terrific. They're hanging out. So they loop in Diggle and Mr. Terrific, but they leave Felicity out of the loop. Because Team Flash locked them up, and so I guess Felicity was going to lock them up, but not Diggle or Mr. Terrific. Makes sense. So anyway, some token members of Team Flash show up, Cisco and Caitlin, of course, and they're kind of hanging out in wherever, I guess Argus, that's where they are now, because I didn't see the bunker, because they were all hanging out at Argus now.
No, the bunker is no more.
Okay.
Yeah, the bunker's the bunker's gone.
Okay. So, but anyway, the important thing is that Oliver, Barry, and Kara head off to Gotham. We learn kind of what the status is of Batman, which is the most important thing, is that Batman is like still sort of an urban legend. Barry thinks he's real. Oliver doesn't. Again, another good meta moment of Oliver going, no, I'm the original vigilante. There is no Batman.
Do you realize I almost slapped my TV when he said that?
That was.
But if you think about it, he's been gone for 3 years, right? Nobody's seen him for 3 years. Well, that explains why he wasn't helping with Crisis or Invasion.
Also, because he's got his hands full in Gotham. Star City can deal with its own problems. Well, they got Felicity. They have Felicity. They don't need Batman.
You know what, guys? Okay, like just as an aside here, I saw a really, because people, the think tank was going throughout this entire crossover and is continuing to function, and somebody brought up a very intriguing theory with regards to continuity in this particular universe that would seem to suggest. Somebody suggested on Twitter, the theory is that the 3 years that he's been gone coincides with I think it was 7 to 8 years that Bale's Batman was gone in between The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. So the theory is that the Arrowverse is the Dark Knight trilogy verse.
Man, if Christian Bale shows up on a CW show, one of y'all better be here to catch me. That's all I'm going to say.
You temper your expectations.
I wouldn't put any money on that.
Well,
but
I don't
think the CW budget has enough money for that.
But there is, I mean, because we'll get into this, but I feel like this is the episode of the crossover that had this is where I lost count of the Easter eggs. There were entirely too many. And maybe the reason I lost count is because this is the show that had the most that I could catch, seeing as how it's the one that deals the most with the home of my favorite superhero of all time. So I spent this entire episode counting Easter eggs and was like, I give up. There's too many. You've thrown so many into this episode, and I love you for it, but damn, I can't count all those. And there's one in this episode that is from that universe. So and that's part of the theory as well, like basically saying, hey, that this is just confirmation that those universes are the same.
I mean, at what point is it establishing the same universe or paying another fan service nod? So I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily buy it, but I like the effort that was brought forth there.
You guys
I don't buy it at all, but hey, if it makes you feel better.
Well, here's what you can say. The Easter egg he's talking about, I think, is where you see Bane's mask.
Right.
Which is in the scene with Nora Freeze, played by Stephen Amell's wife.
Right.
The only reason I knew that was Nora Freeze is because I had heard she was cast, because in the episode I thought they did a pretty crappy job of making clear who the heck that was supposed to be.
She was one I thought was truly shoehorned in for no other reason than who her husband is. And that's
Completely.
fine. After 6.5 years, she should get a part. She's an actress too. Whatever. But Bane's mask, I've seen it, the theory floated, that the reason Batman Bruce is gone for the last 3 years is that he's broken. And that he got his bat broken. He never got it. He never got healed.
Well, then the city would have blown up if that was the case. Like the city,
not necessarily.
Because
here's
the truth. It's not part of the Dark Knight universe.
There you go.
So none of this matters.
It was just a theory that I saw.
It's just a fun Easter egg for you to go, oh my God, there's the thing.
Fair enough. It was
Along
just
with
a theory.
all the names on the wall of however many people of his rogues gallery that were actually on that. I lost count. But
Penguin, Poison Ivy, Clayface, Riddler, Mark Guggenheim, who's apparently an enemy of Batman.
Yep.
That one took me a second. I was like, Guggenheim? Who the hell is Guggenheim? Oh, Guggenheim.
Yeah.
I was slow on the uptake with that one.
It should have been Flugelheim.
Did you guys catch the Batman 66 reference?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so let me call that out. So number one, I was delighted by it. In Kate Kane's office, there's the bust of Shakespeare in a box, and they just left it off to the side, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. You either see it or you don't. That's great. And then they made Kara pick it up so nobody was going to miss it. And I was like, you didn't have to put the big underlining of it. Like, I liked it better when it was just left like in the background and you either saw it or you didn't. The fact that she had to pick it up where I was like, come on.
These shows don't know how to approach subtlety worth a crap. Going back to the whole cyborg Superman thing, it's like, you're going to confuse the audience who doesn't know who Hank Henshaw / Cyborg Superman is, in that you're going to say he's Cyborg Superman. He doesn't look anything like Superman. He's not wearing the costume. He's not doing any of that stuff. But if people who know who Hank Henshaw is and he gets those glowing red eyes, all the fans are like, so we could have just got that nod and went about our business. But no, they had to say, I'm Cyborg Superman. It's like, why? You're not benefiting anybody doing that. So yeah, subtle hints and nods are not the strong point of these
I know.
shows.
I get it because they also were like, hey, we went to the trouble of doing it. We want people to see it. I get it. I just prefer it when it's like, you know, it's easy to miss and then it's kind of a fun thing to go back and look for. But I appreciated that they did it regardless.
Well, let's be fair, though, guys. Like, we have to remember that when we watch these shows, we're watching them as fans who have a connection to the source material that the general audience doesn't have. There are people who watch these shows that have never read a comic, that have never read any of. They wouldn't know Hank Henshaw from A Hole in the Ground. They wouldn't.
But they don't need to at that point, because at him saying in the appearance that he wears at that moment, him telling the general audience who's never read The Death and Return of Superman, he's Cyborg Superman, they have to be going as a general audience. What? Huh?
Yeah, that's.
I knew that, and I still said what? Huh? Because there was no reason for him to call himself that. Didn't make any sense.
So yeah, I don't want to get into a whole thing about something that happened like 2 years ago. But anyway, my point was they just don't know how to leave subtlety be. They have to put it up and wink and nod at you, well, you know, jabbing you with their elbow, going, huh? How about this one? And you know, that's fine. I get it, I guess, but you know, a little subtlety wouldn't hurt anybody there. I want to back up for a second. This Kane Wolfman character, what's the deal with him? Why have I never seen him before this that I can recall?
Because you didn't see the season that he popped up in, which was last season.
Well, I assume it was an Arrow.
Wait, is that Little Dead
Yes.
Deathstroke?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Deathstroke. And
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I was like, oh.
He's from the two-part effective send-off for Manu Bennett from the show, which also features one of the greatest action scenes probably in the entire series history.
Yeah,
this one is focused on Deathstroke as the centerpiece of it.
It's on BBS warehouse level, guys. That's how good it is.
I mean, I must have seen it, but I probably was on my phone in the middle of the episode, because I got to tell you, Arrow is when I fold laundry and catch up on social media when I was still watching it. So that's probably my fault. So anyway, I like the fact that his last name is Wolfman. That just puts a huge smile on my face. So
yeah,
did they say that in the episode and I missed it?
yeah, he calls him Kane
Yeah, I
Wolfman.
think Diggle did say that, like, you know.
Okay, I missed it. I just heard him say Deathstroke's son or something like that.
Well, he called him something else, but I couldn't make out what he said.
Okay.
But he also said it was Kane Wolfman. And I looked it up on IMDb and it said Kane Wolfman. I was like, oh,
Cool.
nice.
Yeah, I missed his name. So, see, that's cool. Anyway, they get to Gotham City. They get mugged, and these are the three people you should not mug. And Barry, still being a little too much Oliver, he lets loose on these guys. I thought it was fine. Like, they gave Barry crap for it. I'm like, no, good for him. Kick their
If somebody
asses.
pulls a
That's fine.
gun on you, man, all bets are off.
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly, right?
I did think Oliver giving Barry crap there was hypocritical, because Barry was literally doing what Oliver would have done. Because
Totally.
he was Oliver. So I was like, you kind of got to recognize this here, that he is you right now. And like yourself, you're both struggling with where the line is between your identities.
Well, and Barry brought that up later when they were in jail. He's like, "No, I did exactly what you would have done," and the perspective in the whole thing was Kara, which was important for that, because you couldn't allow Oliver's hypocrisy to continue in that regard. The both of them had to be set straight on what they were doing.
Well, and it's a very Oliver thing, though, to do as I say, not as I do. Over the past, whatever, it's been 7 years.
That's true.
More than
He's been called out on that a lot of times over the years, so it made sense. But why they got arrested is a little baffling to me. But did you? I mean, I know you guys did, but you heard where this all took place? At Nolan and Burton streets.
Yep.
The corner of Nolan and Burton. Notice they were not at the corner of Schumacher Street. I'll just have you know.
No.
No, and somewhere else in the crossover, there's a Wade and Augustine. They do that a few times. I mean, that is like table stakes to honor writers. You make them a street name.
Right.
Of course, yeah. So I was delighted by that. They go to jail, and Kate Kane bails them out for whatever reason, she's keeping an eye on the city, and she wants them out of Gotham. And so they get taken to Wayne Tower, which has become decrepit and overgrown, and then they meet Kate Kane. Ruby Rose is Kate Kane. We get to meet her
finally.
And so this is where we're like, okay, so what's going on in Gotham right now? Where's Batman? Where's Bruce? And I think she gives a good explanation for where Bruce would be, because even I think it's Kara that calls it out of like, hey, isn't it weird that Batman and Bruce would leave at the same time? And she gave good rationale of like, well, when Batman left and Gotham even got worse, Bruce couldn't take it, and so he eventually left too, and it was well done. So this is where we get Ruby Rose as Kate Kane. I loved her, much like Lois. I would have liked more of her, but I already said that at the beginning. But what we did get, I really liked. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm into it, and it is interesting how they were setting the status quo of Gotham. Of Batman is missing, Batwoman has stepped up to kind of take his place and to protect the city. She's renovating Wayne Tower. She's taking over, so that way, as they move into a pilot or a show or whatever ends up happening with the character, you can do Gotham and Batwoman without Batman.
Oh, and there's also another. They're even by the time this particular episode is over, they're even hinting at the potential of her having her own crossover with another character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She forms a pretty quick and strong camaraderie with Supergirl.
Who knows and that I will admit this is one thing that at first slightly confused me, because she's never really said like in Supergirl there have been these mentions and references to Clark's friend and this guy who had a lot of gadgets and a lot of time or whatnot on Earth 38, etc. Like back in season 2 when James was becoming Guardian. Like there have been there have been mentions here and there about Batman, but they've never directly referenced him. So Kara's never actually said what she knows in terms of whether or not she knows who we don't find that out until this episode. This is where we find out that she absolutely knows. But I will admit that at the beginning when she was asking the question, I wasn't 100% certain that she did know and wondered if she was like deducing it, but then you find out later, oh no, she knows. She absolutely knows, at least on her Earth, how it goes. Especially when she has the conversation about how my cousin knows Bruce, they're friends, well, frenemies, that whole thing. Like that. This is the first time that we know for certain that Kara is aware of who Batman actually is.
Mm-hmm. The frenemies line just gave me a little pause. I get the whole, rivalry that everybody has in their minds between Batman and Superman, and I play the game as well as anybody else with that stuff, but at some point we've got to drop these two are at odds way too much, and we need to make them the world's finest. We need to make them friends again. It needs to stop. So I did not appreciate the frenemies line necessarily.
Yeah, the movie should not have been called Batman versus Superman. It should have been Batman Hearts Superman.
I feel like that might have changed it just a little bit.
I stand by what I said.
You get what I'm saying.
It's the movie we all need right now.
Never going to look at that title the same.
We need a paradigm shift or whatever it's called, where it goes back to where it was before the rivalry really got set off between those two, or more importantly, the fans of those two saying who would win what. So
it's so silly. I never understood that of like, oh, you love Batman, so do you hate Superman? I'm like, no. When is that a rule? I love Batman and I love Superman.
We just addressed this on the last episode. Batman is my number 1. Superman is my number 2. Yes, it's cool when they tussle every so often. It always is when the heroes get into it a little bit. But by God, it's become the whole thing between these two for the last, it seems like 5 years or longer now, probably closer to 10 at this point.
Well, maybe Supergirl and Batwoman are going to work towards changing that.
Well,
I don't think that's a maybe. I think that I think that if they have their druthers, that's going to happen.
We're getting ahead of ourselves in that, and I'm going to address that when we reach that point in the episode. But yes, there is that moment. A couple of notable lines that I want to call out here because I put down all these quotes that made me smile or were notable. Number one, Barry saying, "Batman's real," was amazing. Love that. Yeah. Kate addressing the three of them from that little balcony saying, if you're visiting Gotham to compare grappling hooks with Batman, you're out of luck. No one's seen him in years. That was fantastic. She
followed by Barry saying, I would never dream of comparing myself to a badass like Batman.
Yes, that was awesome.
Yes, that was, and then and the little look that Oliver gave him was priceless.
Yes,
yeah,
that was excellent. One of Bruce's R&D guys still works in the building. Come on, guys, that's a Lucius Fox nod all day long. Has to be, or at least in my mind it was. If I'm reading too much into it, so be it. But
I didn't catch that, but that's a good pull.
I assumed Lucius too. I've seen some speculation. I have no idea if this is one of the casting breakdowns that not Lucius, but maybe his son,
Luke.
Oh, see, I would buy that too. So I mean that works for me.
And I know Luke becomes Batwing in the comics, but I didn't read that much of him, so I don't know enough there to say if that fits. It's speculation that I saw.
Oh, it totally fits. He was. Yeah. I can't even say that because he was in Detective Rebirth, and I read a good portion of Detective Rebirth when it started.
And then finally the line that she delivers as she's walking away. Oh, and Wi-Fi passwords, Alfred.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just, nice little. Again, most of this is like fan service stuff, but it's enough to put a smile on my face, but not get carried away.
Right.
Not get carried away. Christian Bale's Batman coming.
Look, we dream big or die. Come on.
Yeah. Never ask Jamie for box office predictions.
160 million is what Aquaman is making next weekend. Bank it.
It's
already making that, Jamie.
It's possible.
It'll be past that before it even opens here.
No, he's saying domestic opening weekend.
Oh well, okay. I mean, here's hoping.
He's a madman. He needs to be under the tutelage of Deacon at Arkham.
He dreams big, so if it doesn't get there, his hopes are just crushed that much harder.
It doesn't work well for radio, but I'm over here wringing my hands just because. I know that we saw her, kind of on the rooftop in the Stinger for the first episode, and then we saw her, on the rooftop toward the beginning of this episode. But somehow that moment where she goes down in that elevator with that look of raw determination and whatever you want to call it about her, and walks up to that costume, just every hair on my body stood up in that moment, every single one.
Well, because we've gotten that was emblematic of moments that we've gotten in the movies. Bale had a moment like that in Begins. Affleck had a moment like that in BVS. Keaton had a moment like that in his movies. This was her version of that, and it was awesome. Loved it.
I love the music in that scene. Being the shows we're talking about, I was surprised that her costume wasn't on a mannequin, because that seems to be the thing they do on these shows.
It wasn't on a freaking hanger.
but the music, I love the music. I've replayed that scene a few times just to listen to the music. I really like that theme for her.
I can't recall it in my head, even though I've watched it twice, but I didn't have any objection to it that I can recall. So.
Yeah, pull it back up later. It's a good one. It's a good one. And I tend to enjoy all of the character themes that Blake Neely has done for these characters. And I'm pretty sure that we just heard the Batwoman one, and I look forward to hopefully hearing that on a weekly basis.
We shall see. Blake Neely did say at Comic-Con, because I asked him the question at Comic-Con about hey, how many superhero shows can you do? How much do you have in you? And he goes, well, that's why I passed off Titans, because he's like, I'm exhausted. And he goes, but then I heard Batwoman, and I'm like, oh no, I got to do that. So Batwoman pulled him back in too.
So Batwoman is more important to him than Robin is. Got it.
I guess so. Nobody's perfect. There's no accounting for taste.
Oh no, you're a Robin fan, aren't you, Andy?
Yes.
I was going to say something about co-signing that sentiment, but I don't want to be in the podcast unemployment line tomorrow. So,
So anyway, they find out Deegan works at Arkham. They're going to go there. And then, yes, that is where Kate heads down to suit up on her own to go intervene. And that seems like a good spot to kind of hit pause here and then jump over to the other show. So it's about halfway through the the 3-episode crossover, is right as Kate is about to put on the Batwoman outfit.
One more thing.
Anything else?
John Wesley Shipp. He first shows up here starting. I mean, we see him in the Earth 90 thing that was on the stinger of all last week at the beginning of the part 1. But he starts in these episodes coming through, and we first see him breach through to talk to Cisco and Felicity.
Cisco, Felicity, Caitlin, Diggle. Yeah.
And I feel like we got to mention that because we haven't mentioned the Red Skies yet, and that's obviously going to become important down the line.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I couldn't remember when that happened in this episode.
The berry popping up in that cloud, I think, was the very next thing after the costume reveal, or pretty close to it.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember, but yes. I mean, I guess since you brought it up, I love John Wesley Shipp. It's amazing how good he still looks in that suit. Mm-hmm. The fact that they recreated the suit and it still looks that great was awesome. So yes, like that was just another really cool surprise around Elseworlds, but I have more to add to that, but I will add to that once we get more into his part, because right now it is just kind of the tease of, we know he's out there, we know that he had the run-in with a monitor, like you said, that was the tag at the end of The Flash and sort of the way it was kicked off in the first episode, and then now he's trying to warn our Earth of it. So yeah, I love that, weaving in that version, and I think they did say that was Earth 90.
Yes.
The Earths tend to be named after the main character's date of, like Earth 38 for 1938 for Superman, and then Earth 90 for the 90 Flash series. And I mean, it's just a nice little nod. In fact, these two guys are the ones that kind of pointed that out to me, I think on their last episode or the episode before, where they mentioned that. So credit to them for that. That's not something I caught on my own. But
you didn't pick up Earth 38 for Superman?
No.
Oh, gee.
What are we new here? Do I not?
Now you're fired.
Okay.
First you throw some passive aggressive shade at Robin. Now you can't even pick up on 1938 for Superman, dude. I don't even know what you're doing.
I'm useless. What can I tell you? But
Jamie, I'll hire for a No Robins Allowed podcast.
Oh, jeez. Oh.
Excuse me?
You're both cut. You're out.
Oh, hell no.
And thus was the moment that the podcast world shattered.
I am calling Rob Myers, and we're going to kick y'all's asses.
No Robin's podcast. No, you're done.
Since we're talking about him, I just want to say the couple times that John Wesley Shipp did show up, and I mean, he's a pretty big guy, and like every time I see him, like the stupidest thing goes through my head, and nobody's gonna have any appreciation for me but me for this, because my sense of humor is really dumb. But every time I see him in that costume, all I can think of is Hulk Flash.
Oh God.
Yes, I know it's ridiculous. It's stupid. I know.
Oh jeez.
I mean,
I'm gonna give it to you.
Well, because he wasn't that muscular in the '90s show, right? Or was he?
He was, but he was leaner.
He was pretty muscular.
I mean, he was definitely muscular. If you watch that show, he goes shirtless, and he was in great shape.
Okay.
But yeah, he's a little thicker now.
Most of the time. And '90s fashion didn't show it off as much.
Oh, that's right, because he had like the baggy shirts and then like the tight waist.
Well, I also figured that the original costume from the '90s didn't that costume have padding, or did it not?
It did.
It did.
Yeah,
I don't know. I guess I would assume.
So I guess you could say that this one, since it's a different material anyway, didn't have padding. So perhaps they relied more on his current physique. Which, if that's the case, more power to him. He's in great shape if that's the case.
I mean, it's been 28 years, right? He looks amazing.
Yeah, no, No argument here.
He must be on the Hawk and Dove health plan at the gym.
Right?
No,
All right. Well, let's hit pause and we will wrap this one up, and then everybody can jump over to DCTV Squadcast for the second half of the Elseworlds crossover. But before we do that, let's take care of a little housekeeping. Ray, Brent, thank you guys for joining us on this crazy crossover. The folks are going to follow us over to DCTV, but just in case they want to catch up with you, Ray, where can they do that?
If they want to catch up with us on Twitter, I'm at the Flightcast. Brent, where are you at?
I'm at Brentak Prime, and the show account is just DCTV Squadcast.
And our show is listed at suicidesquadcast.com with the rest of the shows on our network.
And also make sure you guys, if you aren't already, check out Fans Without Borders, one of my favorite shows. It's a can't miss every week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. You hear what he said, Brent? It's a can't miss.
I did, and I would say it's recommended listening.
I did not.
I would
not
recommend
say
to
that
skip
as an
it because
accident.
apparently they don't like Robin over there, and you don't need that kind of negativity in your life.
That's just
So
him. I am all about the Robins. Batman
Okay.
who? Give me Robin.
all right, Brent, you can stay. Jamie, where can the folks keep up with you if they don't already?
You can find me on Twitter at BatRaider3960. You can find me floating around various Real Fans groups on Facebook.
All right, and if you want to follow me on Twitter or on Instagram, it's just my name, Andy DiGenova. But that'll do it for this episode of Holy BatCast, our Elseworlds special. Thank you so much, as always, for downloading the show. Please do subscribe to the show. Please rate and review us on iTunes. And as Michael Keaton's Batman says, I want you to tell all your friends about me. Visit holybatcast.com. Follow the show, Holy BatCast, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. But that'll do it for this episode. On behalf of Jamie, Brent, Ray, and myself, Andy, this has been Holy BatCast. We'll see you next time. Same bat time, same bat channel.
I feel the waves crash down inside, and they pull me under.
Holy BatCast is brought to you by Real Fans for Real Movies. Remember, the thoughts and opinions shared by the participants are theirs and theirs alone, and do not represent the companies or organizations they happen to work for.
Still think he's a myth? Yeah! Let's go.
Batman's real.
Come on. Who's this badass? Ah! That's not Batman.
Kate Kane told you to get out of Gotham. You should have listened to her.